There is a creature that could do anything it wanted to us. Picture this: 10 tons of muscle moving at 35 miles per hour, jaws that can close around almost anything, intelligence we still cannot fully measure, and complete dominance in an environment where humans are utterly helpless. This animal shares our planet. It encountered our ancestors back when we were just learning to build boats. It has seen us clearly, our fear, our weakness, our total vulnerability in the water. And yet in all of recorded history, there has never been a single documented fatal attack on a human being in the wild. Not once. This is the orca. And the longer you think about it, the more you realize. The question isn't what kind of animal it is. The question is what that tells us about ourselves. Part 1. Name, Body, World. Let's start with the name, because the name is already a story of injustice. Killer whale. 2 words that stuck to this animal and built the image of a monster long before anyone seriously began to study it. But where did the name come from? In the 18th century, Spanish whalers worked the waters of the Bering Sea, hard, dangerous, bloody work. And they watched orcas hunt whales. They saw how a group of these animals would methodically, precisely, almost surgically, take down a creature several times their size. The Spanish wrote in their logs, "Asesina balenas," killers of whales. Not killers of people, killers of whales. But when those records were translated, the words got flipped. Killers of whales became whale killers, then killer whale. One small translation error, and 300 years of being seen as a monster. But here's the thing, the orca is not a whale at all. It is the largest member of the dolphin family. Its closest relative isn't the blue whale or the sperm whale. It's the bottlenose dolphin, the one everyone loves. That matters, because dolphins aren't just fish with a smile. They are social, thinking, feeling creatures with culture, language, and family. Now, the body. Because when you understand how an orca is built, you begin to grasp the scale of what you're dealing with. An adult male can reach 30 feet in length and weigh up to 10 tons. That's roughly the size of 2 school buses, except alive, flexible, and capable of reaching 35 miles per hour. But the speed alone isn't what's remarkable, it's how it's achieved. In the 1980s, NASA engineers studied the biomechanics of the orca's tail fin while designing underwater vehicles. What they found? The tail stroke operates at 87% efficiency. For comparison, the most advanced ship propellers of the time barely reached 60. Nature had solved underwater propulsion better than anything human engineering had produced. The black and white coloring that looks beautiful to us is actually one of the most sophisticated camouflage systems in nature. Water has contrasting layers, dark depths, and a bright surface above. The white patches on the belly blend with the light from above. The dark back dissolves into the depths below. For any prey looking in any direction, the orca effectively disappears in the water, a fraction of a second before it's too late. Orcas have colonized every ocean on the planet. From tropical seas to Arctic ice, they are everywhere, and everywhere they are the ones in charge. But what makes them truly remarkable from a biological standpoint is how long they live, especially the females. Female orcas can live to 90 years, but that's not just a striking number. It's a story that turns our understanding of nature upside down. Off the coast of Washington State, researchers followed a female known as Granny, scientific designation J2, from 1967 onward. When she was first photographed, she was already clearly an older animal. When she disappeared from sight in 2016, scientists estimated her age at over 100 years. 100 years. She outlived multiple generations of the researchers who studied her. She watched the coastline change, ships come and go, her population shrink under the pressure of human activity. And through all of it, she stayed with her family, guiding, remembering, leading. Part 2. Mind, Society, Language. This is where we reach one of the most remarkable scientific discoveries of the 20th century in marine biology. In 1973, biologist Michael Bigg began the first systematic census of orcas off the coast of British Columbia. Before him, no one had done this seriously. Orcas were considered dangerous, unimportant, almost a nuisance. Big came up with a simple but brilliant method: identification by the shape of the dorsal fin and the pattern of the gray saddle patch behind it. Every orca is unique, like a human fingerprint. And as he cataloged animals year after year, he discovered something completely unexpected. There are two fundamentally different types of orcas living in the same waters, and they never, ever mix. Residents, sedentary, living in large family groups, eating only fish, and transients, nomads, traveling in small groups, hunting marine mammals. They don't interbreed. They don't communicate. They treat each other as strangers, even though they are genetically close. The split didn't happen through geography or conventional evolution. It happened through culture, through traditions passed down generation after generation, for so long that scientists are now seriously discussing whether these might be two separate species, diverged not by genes, but by way of life. Stop for a moment and feel the weight of that. An animal divided into distinct cultural groups, not humans, orcas. And these groups are so different in their traditions, language, and habits that biologists are prepared to recognize them as separate species. We tend to think of culture as our exclusive domain, that only humans can create traditions, pass down knowledge, and build identity through custom rather than instinct. The orca has been quietly disproving that idea for millions of years. We only started listening in 1963, when the first scientists arrived at Vancouver Island with cameras and notebooks. And since then, every new discovery asks the same question: who, exactly, is watching whom? There is one experiment I can't stop thinking about. In 2001, researchers at the Hawaii Institute of Marine Biology conducted the mirror test on orcas. This is the classic self-awareness check, the same one previously passed only by great apes, elephants, and bottlenose dolphins. A mark is placed on the animal's body, a mirror is presented, and researchers watch. Will the animal examine the mark on itself, understanding that the reflection is its own image? Most animals on Earth don't get it. They either ignore the mirror or treat the reflection as another creature. The orcas in that experiment methodically examined the marks on their own bodies, turning themselves to get a better look at each spot in their reflection. They knew they were looking at themselves. They were aware of their own existence. A 10-ton animal looking into a mirror, thinking, "That's me." How do you talk about an orca as just a dangerous marine predator after that? But let's start at the foundation of all orca social life, the thing without which nothing else exists. Let's start with the mother. An orca family is organized around its oldest female, not the strongest male, not the fastest hunter, the oldest woman in the group. This is a matriarchy in the most literal and profound sense. In 2015, a team of researchers from the University of Exeter published a study in Science that gave this phenomenon scientific backing. Groups with older matriarchs found food significantly more reliably, especially in lean years, when salmon were scarce. Why? Because she remembered. She had lived 70, 80, 90 years, and she had been paying attention. She knew where the fish had been in any given year, where the schools moved in dry seasons, which routes had worked for decades. Her memory was the collective survival strategy of her entire family. And when she dies, the mortality rate of her offspring rises sharply, not years later, but in the period immediately following her death. The family doesn't just lose a member, it loses a living library, one that can never be replaced. Now, about something biologists call one of the most puzzling phenomena in mammalian evolution: menopause. Among all creatures on Earth, true menopause, where a female stops reproducing but continues to live for many more decades, occurs in only 3 species: humans, short-finned pilot whales, and orcas. This is so rare that scientists struggled for a long time to understand why it exists at all from an evolutionary standpoint. By pure evolutionary logic, a female who no longer produces offspring seems, in a sense, redundant. So why does nature keep her alive for so long? Darren Croft of the University of Cambridge answered that question in 2019, and the answer is so elegant you just want to sit with it quietly. After a female orca stops reproducing, she stops competing with her adult children for resources. She no longer spends enormous energy on pregnancy and nursing. Instead, she devotes herself entirely to something else. She becomes the living memory of the group, a navigator of decades of accumulated experience. Her evolutionary value isn't in the children she gives birth to. It's in the children and grandchildren she helps survive through knowledge. The grandmother as an evolutionary mechanism. The grandmother as a biological necessity. But the most moving aspect of orca social life isn't the wisdom of the elders. It's what happens between a mother and her son. Male orcas never leave their mother. Never. Not a metaphor. Not an exaggeration. A literal biological fact. A fully grown adult male, weighing several tons, capable of taking down a creature twice his size, sleeps beside his mother every night, swims beside her every day. Data from the Seattle-based Center for Whale Research, published in 2012, revealed something genuinely unsettling. Following a mother's death, the mortality rate of her adult sons increases 8-fold within 2 years. Not 1.5 times, not twice, 8 times. Adult males, physically formidable, experienced hunters, lose their will to survive after their mother is gone. This isn't instinct. This isn't a behavioral reflex. This is grief. Real, deep, devastating grief. The kind we've always assumed belongs exclusively to humans. And since we're talking about grief, we have to talk about August of 2018 and a female named Tahlequah. Tahlequah, known to scientists as J35, belongs to the southern resident population off the coast of Washington State's Olympic Peninsula. In late July of 2018, she gave birth to a calf. It lived for less than an hour. And then, Tahlequah did something that NOAA researchers watched with growing astonishment and grief. Over 17 days, she carried the body of her dead newborn at the water's surface, refusing to let it sink, lifting it back up again every time it began to go under. 17 days. Over 1,000 miles of travel with her family, and the whole time, the mother would not let go of her child. Scientists called it mourning behavior and grief display, but honestly, what do those terms add? A mother lost her child and could not accept it. Everything else is just words around something that needs no explanation. Now, language, because orcas aren't just intelligent, they communicate. In 1980, researcher John Ford, working off the coast of British Columbia, made a discovery that seemed almost unbelievable at first. Every orca family has a unique repertoire of sounds, calls, whistles, clicks that are not found in any other family group. Ford called these dialects, not just different sounds, dialects, because the structure and function of these vocal systems bears a striking resemblance to the way human regional accents work. From a family's dialect, you can determine which clan an orca belongs to, as precisely as a linguist can tell which region of a country a person comes from by their pronunciation. And these dialects are not innate. A calf is born without them and learns them from its mother and family members over the first years of life. This is cultural transmission of information. This is learning. This is a tradition that lives not in genes, but in memory and in voice. Orcas communicate across 3 distinct registers: echolocation clicks for navigation and hunting, high-frequency whistles for close communication within the family, and low-frequency calls that carry several miles underwater. A 2005 study from the University of Washington showed that orca sonar accuracy under acoustic interference outperforms military hydrophones, systems that took decades and billions of dollars to develop. Once again, nature was ahead. And now the picture starts to come together. A brain weighing up to 15 pounds compared to the human brain's 3. A gyrification index, a measure of cortical folding complexity, of 5.7. That's the highest of any animal on the planet, including humans. A creature that grieves, that speaks in dialects, that recognizes itself in a mirror, that organizes society around the wisdom of its elders, that dies of sorrow after losing its mother. We tend to think of intelligence as something measured by the ability to solve problems or build tools. But the orca offers a different dimension: the depth of relationships, the complexity of social memory, the richness of emotional life. By those measures, it stands alongside us, not below us, not above us, but beside us. Two species on this planet have built complex cultures grounded in family, language, and the transmission of knowledge across generations. One of them considers itself the pinnacle of creation. The other simply lives in the ocean and has nothing to prove. Part 3. The Hunt, Humans, Threats. There is a piece of footage shot by a BBC cameraman in 2006, somewhere off the coast of Antarctica. If you've seen it, you haven't forgotten it. If you haven't, brace yourself. Your understanding of the animal world is about to change. A group of orcas surrounds an ice floe where a seal is resting. The seal is relatively safe. It's on ice, they're in water, and as long as that boundary holds, it survives. Then, the orcas do something that left the operators filming it genuinely breathless. They line up in a row, accelerate together, and dive simultaneously beneath the surface, generating a wave more than 3 feet high. The wave washes over the floe. The seal slides into the water. If somehow it manages to climb back, they do it again and again, methodically clearing ice fragments out of the way, shrinking the refuge with each pass until there's nothing left. This is not instinct. This is not reflex. This is a plan. Coordinated teamwork with distributed roles, synchronized execution, and a clear understanding of the objective. This is strategy. Something someone had to invent, someone had to pass down, and someone had to be taught. The orca is the greatest hunter on this planet. Not the fastest in absolute terms, not the physically strongest, but the most inventive, the most adaptable, the most unpredictable. To truly understand that, you have to look at a few specific hunting techniques, each one so extraordinary it's hard to believe until you see it. Start with Patagonia, the shores of the Valdez Peninsula in Argentina, where in 1979, biologist Juan Carlos Lopez first documented a technique that has captivated scientists and everyone else who hears about it ever since. The orcas there hunt sea lions that bask on gently sloping sandy beaches. The shoreline is the sea lion's safety boundary. The water is the orca's territory. Logic says the boundary can't be crossed. The hunt is impossible. The orca thought otherwise. Several individuals from the local group learned to intentionally beach themselves, accelerating at full speed and literally launching themselves onto the shallows, just yards from the water's edge, grabbing an unsuspecting sea lion, then writhing their entire body to drag themselves back into the sea. It is extraordinarily dangerous. An animal weighing several tons stranded on shore risks its own life every single time. The wrong angle, too far from the water, sand that's too dry, and it can't get back. The technique requires precise calculation of speed, angle, and distance. And here's the most remarkable part. Of roughly 30 orcas living off the Valdez Peninsula, only 13 have mastered it. The others haven't. Because this is not an innate ability. It is a skill learned over years by watching those who already know how. Young animals spend hours lying in the shallows, practicing the feel of sand and water simultaneously before they attempt their first real strike. A culture of hunting, a school on the edge of the ocean. Now, whales, because this is where the orca demonstrates a quality hardest to accept in an animal: strategic patience. Gray whales make their annual migrations along the Pacific coast, and orcas travel with them. Biologist Peter Whitehead of Dalhousie University described this tactic in 1991, and it is remarkable for its cold efficiency. Orcas don't attack adult gray whales directly. That's too costly, too dangerous. Instead, they target calves swimming alongside their mothers. A group surrounds a mother-calf pair and begins methodically, over hours without rushing, separating the calf from its mother. They ram it, prevent it from surfacing for air, exhaust it. The mother is helpless with distress. She can hear her calf, she can feel it nearby, but she can't break through the circle of hunters. When it's over, the orcas eat the tongue and the soft tissue around the mouth. Only that. Hundreds of kilograms of nutritious blubber are left untouched. They took exactly what they needed, with minimal expenditure of energy, and left. No cruelty for its own sake, just cold, precise, formidable calculation. And now, the strangest story. about great white sharks and what they're afraid of. The great white shark is one of the most perfect predators in the history of life on Earth. It has barely changed in millions of years because there was nothing to change. It was already ideal. It fears almost nothing. It is the thing others fear. But in 1997, off the coast of the Farallon Islands in California, something happened that forced scientists to rethink all of that. Two orcas, just two, not a group, entered the waters where great whites were feeding. Researchers watched as one of the orcas chased down a shark, flipped it onto its back, which induces tonic immobility, a kind of temporary paralysis, and surgically extracted the liver. A massive fat-rich liver weighing tens of pounds. Then both orcas calmly swam away, but that was only the beginning. Researcher Sal Jorgensen of the Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute documented a phenomenon in 2019 that became known as the landscape of fear. After orcas appeared at the Farallon Islands, great white sharks abandoned the area for up to 12 months, not a few days, an entire year. The magnificent predator before whom the entire ocean trembles left and didn't return for almost a year, simply because orcas had been nearby. The landscape of fear is when the mere presence of a predator reshapes the behavior of an entire ecosystem, even when no hunting has occurred. Orcas don't just hunt sharks, they reorganize the entire order of the ocean by the simple fact of their existence. And now, the most important question, the one we started with. Why don't they touch us? Since 2020, more than 700 interactions between orcas and sailing vessels have been recorded off the coasts of Spain and Portugal. They approach, nudge boats, sometimes damage rudders. Global headlines screamed attacks. A study from the University of the Algarve in 2023 found something different. Young orcas interact with boats the same way they interact with any unfamiliar object in the water. They play. This is not aggression. This is curiosity. This is how a young orca explores the world. But the broader question about humans in general goes deeper than a few broken rudders. Orcas encounter people in the water constantly. Divers, surfers, swimmers, and not once, not a single documented fatal attack in the wild. Scientists offer three explanations, and all three are simultaneously convincing and incomplete. First, we simply don't fit their prey profile. Resident orcas eat only fish. Transients eat marine mammals. A human in the water doesn't match any familiar image of prey. We may just be uninteresting as food. Second, their intelligence is sufficient to recognize humans as a separate category of being, not prey, not threat, something else. A creature that recognizes itself in a mirror is fully capable of recognizing another thinking being and responding differently to it. Third, and this is the one that stays with you, cultural tradition. No orca mother has ever taught her calf to hunt humans, not once in all of recorded history, which means the tradition simply doesn't exist. Orcas don't prey on us not because they can't, but because it has never been done, because that's not how things are. And finally, the threats. Because while we marvel at orcas, we are killing them. Polychlorinated biphenyls, industrial chemicals banned in the United States in 1979 and in the Soviet Union in 1990, are still circulating in the ocean. They accumulate in the fatty tissue of marine mammals, moving from prey to predator, concentrating at each level of the food chain. In orcas, at the very top of that chain, the concentrations are catastrophic. These substances suppress the immune system, disrupt hormonal function, and reduce fertility. The bans signed decades ago didn't stop them. They are too persistent, too deeply embedded in the fabric of the ecosystem. Scientists say they will remain in the system for decades more. The southern resident orca population off the coasts of Washington State and British Columbia numbers around 73 individuals. 73. That's one small theater audience, critically endangered status, on the edge of extinction. They are starving because Chinook salmon, their primary food source, are disappearing as river ecosystems collapse. They cannot hunt effectively because the Strait of Juan de Fuca is filled with vessel noise that drowns out their echolocation, the way you can't hold a conversation in a room where 100 people are shouting at once. Canada introduced a 400-meter exclusion zone around orcas in 2018. That matters, but it isn't enough, not nearly enough, and not nearly in time. Here is what I've been building toward. The orca could hunt us. In the water, it is stronger than us, absolutely and completely. It is smarter than us in its own environment. It has every tool, every intelligence, every physical capability to make a human in the ocean prey, rather than an observer. But somewhere deep in a centuries-old cultural tradition, passed from mother to calf across thousands of years, an unspoken rule took hold. We don't touch people, not out of fear, not because we can't, just we don't. The orca is a mirror. When you look at it honestly, not as a dangerous predator, not as an aquarium attraction, but as what it actually is, you see a family that holds together for decades. You see a mother carrying her dead newborn for 17 days, unable to let go. You see a son dying of grief after losing his mother. You see the oldest female in the group, holding in her memory the survival map of an entire clan. You see a creature that speaks in dialects, that teaches its children, that mourns, that remembers, and that chooses. We spent 300 years calling it a killer. It spent those same 300 years leaving us alone.